Welcome to the lesson Emissions from Hydrogen Internal Combustion Engines. In this lesson, we will look at how hydrogen internal combustion engines produce emissions, why oxides of nitrogen form, and how these emissions compare with those from gasoline internal combustion engines. Let us look at our lesson objectives. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to explain what is produced when hydrogen burns in pure oxygen versus air. Next, you will be able to describe how and why oxides of nitrogen form in hydrogen internal combustion engines. Then, you will be able to identify the main factors that affect oxides of nitrogen formation in a hydrogen internal combustion engine. Following that, you will be able to compare emissions from hydrogen internal combustion engines and gasoline internal combustion engines. Finally, you will be able to recognize why hydrogen internal combustion engines can sometimes still emit harmful emissions. Let's start by asking this question. What happens when hydrogen burns? When hydrogen burns with only oxygen, the result is simple. It makes water. But in internal combustion engines, hydrogen does not burn in pure oxygen. It burns in the air. Air contains both oxygen and nitrogen. The high heat inside the internal combustion engine also causes some of the nitrogen to react. This creates harmful gases called oxides of nitrogen. Note that some hydrogen vehicles operate like a regular internal combustion engine, burning hydrogen, while others utilize a fuel cell to generate electricity from hydrogen. Only the hydrogen internal combustion engines that burn fuel produce oxides of nitrogen. Fuel cell electric vehicles do not burn fuel and do not make these gases. So, why do oxides of nitrogen form in hydrogen internal combustion engines? Hydrogen burns very hot inside an internal combustion engine. When the temperature gets very high, the nitrogen in the air starts to react with oxygen. This reaction creates oxides of nitrogen gases. So, even though hydrogen itself is clean, the high heat of combustion can still create pollution. Let's look at the factors that affect the formation of oxides of nitrogen. The amount of oxides of nitrogen produced depends on several internal combustion engine conditions. If the internal combustion engine operates at higher temperatures or pressures, more oxides of nitrogen are produced. Changing the air-to-fuel ratio, compression ratio, internal combustion engine speed, or ignition timing changes how hot the internal combustion engine runs. Some internal combustion engines use thermal dilution, which lowers the cylinder temperature and helps reduce oxides of nitrogen. This graph illustrates a typical curve of oxides of nitrogen relative to phi for a hydrogen internal combustion engine. Oxides of nitrogen increase and decrease depending on the richness or leanness of the mixture. Now, we will look at other emissions in hydrogen internal combustion engines. Hydrogen fuel itself does not contain carbon, but small amounts of carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide can still appear in the exhaust. This happens when oil from the internal combustion engine leaks into the combustion chamber and burns. If an internal combustion engine is worn or damaged, oil can leak into the combustion chamber and burn. This can produce small amounts of carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide, even in a hydrogen internal combustion engine. Well-maintained internal combustion engines emit much lower emissions. This table compares emissions from hydrogen internal combustion engines and gasoline engines. Hydrogen internal combustion engines can produce very low levels of oxides of nitrogen, carbon monoxide, and hydrocarbons when properly maintained and controlled. Gasoline internal combustion engines can reduce oxides of nitrogen, but doing so usually increases carbon monoxide and hydrocarbon emissions. The main reason hydrogen internal combustion engines avoid hydrocarbon emissions is that hydrogen does not contain carbon. Figure A illustrates a typical curve of oxides of nitrogen relative to phi for a hydrogen internal combustion engine. Figure B shows that the oxides of nitrogen for a gasoline internal combustion engine are reduced as phi decreases, like a hydrogen internal combustion engine. However, in a gasoline internal combustion engine, the reduction in oxides of nitrogen is offset by increased carbon monoxide and hydrocarbon emissions. Let's look at the summary for our lesson. Emissions from hydrogen internal combustion engines. When hydrogen burns with only oxygen, it makes water. But in internal combustion engines, hydrogen burns in air, which contains nitrogen. The high heat causes nitrogen to react, forming oxides of nitrogen. Only hydrogen internal combustion engines that burn fuel produce these gases. Fuel cell vehicles do not burn fuel and do not produce oxides of nitrogen. Hydrogen burns at very high temperatures in an internal combustion engine. When the temperature becomes very hot, nitrogen and oxygen in the air react with each other. This reaction creates oxides of nitrogen. So, even though hydrogen is a clean fuel, high heat can still cause pollution. The amount of oxides of nitrogen depends on how the internal combustion engine is running. Hotter internal combustion engines and higher pressures make more oxides of nitrogen. Changing the air-to-fuel ratio, compression ratio, internal combustion engine speed, and ignition timing affects the temperature. Some internal combustion engines use thermal dilution to lower the temperature and reduce oxides of nitrogen. Hydrogen does not contain carbon, so it does not naturally produce carbon emissions. However, if internal combustion engine oil leaks into the combustion chamber and ignites, it can produce small amounts of carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. Worn or poorly maintained internal combustion engines are more likely to cause this. Hydrogen internal combustion engines can produce very low emissions when well controlled. They do not produce hydrocarbon emissions because hydrogen has no carbon. Gasoline internal combustion engines can reduce oxides of nitrogen, but when they do, carbon monoxide and hydrocarbons often increase in concentration. This makes controlling emissions more difficult in gasoline internal combustion engines. Thank you.